So, real simple question here. Do the Jaguars have any shot at winning the AFC South in 2025? Now, when you actually look at the way the AFC South shaped up in 2024, the Texans won a division at 10 and 7. The Colts were second in the division at 8 and 9. Then a big kind of variance here with the Jaguars being 4 and 13. And then the team with the worst record in the NFL, the Tennessee Titans, at 3 and 14. So there is obviously a lot of work to do for the Jaguars to potentially win the AFC South. We can go ahead and go team by team and kind of see really the outlooks of these teams. The Colts, I'll start with them. They're kind of in a situation where they're in a do or die kind of spot where I feel like if they're a team that doesn't make the playoffs, they're probably just going to go ahead and blow it all up. I mean, Chris Ballard came back for another year, and it all surprised us when the late Jim Irsay kind of announced that Chris Ballard will be back, just because he's been kind of mediocre. Like he's been drafting these teams, he's been signing these teams, and he's had some good players found here and there. But when it all comes down to it, the Colts haven't won the AFC South since 2014. And it's not like the AFC South has been very strong since 2014, right? It feels like, every year it's like there's only really one good team every year, it really seems like. So, yeah, the Chris Ballard somehow hasn't been able to win the lowly AFC South. I think where he has missed most, Chris Ballard, has been kind of the most premium positions. Hasn't been able to hit on quarterback. They couldn't find a big sack guy, right? Kwity Paye hasn't worked out. We'll see how Latu Latu works out, but his rookie season, he was coming into the season, he was seen as kind of the best rookie pass rusher. Only 4 sacks in 2024. So we'll see how he kind of develops. But you also look around with this guy, the quarterback issues, I think, has been the main thing. Hasn't been able to get the quarterback position right. Of course, they have Anthony Richardson on the roster right now. They're hoping that works out. But with Anthony Richardson, I think the biggest knock on him is the fact that he is just maturity issues, right? I think that while maturity issues can be one of the easiest things to solve, it's up to Anthony Richardson if he wants to solve it. He is very young. I think he's only like 23 years old, but Anthony Richardson has to find it in himself to really be able to elevate his play. And not only that, of course, he's oft injured. It's just been a weird situation for Anthony Richardson. And of course, Daniel Jones was signed on to really push for him and also just compete for a starting spot. I mean, I think Anthony Richardson will get the week 1 starting spot, but I think his position is being held on by a thread, right? And I think the moment that Anthony Richardson is actually benched, I think that's when his Indianapolis Colts career is over, right? And it feels like it's been a very short career, but the patience is very thin when it comes to these NFL coaching staff. So I think it's a do or die year for the Colts. I think if they don't make the playoffs, then Chris Ballard is gone. I think Shane Steichen is gone. I think Anthony Richardson is gone. Obviously, there's going to be a new owner. I don't know if there's a new owner yet. Maybe it's passed on to his, probably someone in his family. But I imagine they want to make their own mark on a team, and they are in a weird spot because they do have some talent, but they have kind of an aging roster, right? DeForest Buckner is getting older. I mean, Kenny Moore, 29 years old. Quentin Nelson, 29 years old. Brain Smith, 29 years old. It's I think they're in a situation, like I said, if they don't make the playoffs, I think it's just time for them to blow it up, do a hard reset on their team, and just see with a new GM, coaching staff, and roster, can they get the quarterback in? Can they clean things up? And can they kind of start fresh where they have, a wealth of a bunch of youth that's able to, take the team over the top? Kind of where the Texans are right now, right? They got a bunch of good players, but they also have a bunch of young players. So I think that they might try to take that same approach. Now, when it comes to the Titans in 2025, I mean, short analysis here, I think they're going to be awful. I think that that's probably a part of the plan. I don't see them competing. I think the biggest mistake that the Titans made was that in 2024, they were making moves like they were trying to compete, signing Calvin Ridley to a bunch of money, trading for L'Jarius Sneed. I think that they should have just played a position of, hey, let's go hard rebuild here. But I think in 2025, it'll be a growth period for them. I think they're going to play for draft position again, and I don't think that they are competing for any kind of AFC South seeding or playoff seeding at all. So I don't think they'll be good. Now we got to talk about the Houston Texans. The AFC South currently runs through them. Obviously, 10-7 last year, back-to-back AFC South champions. Won a playoff game in each of the last 2 years, and 5-1 against the AFC South last year. So no doubt, they will be the preseason favorite in all the major websites and all the major betting sites to be able to win the AFC South. Now, their new regime really is working. Of course, after hiring and firing a new head coach every year, they feel like they have it right with D'Amico Ryans and Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio has done a lot of things right when it comes to being able to get a franchise quarterback. The risk to trade up for Will Anderson paid off. Of course, the Jaguars did something similar this year. I mean, they traded up to get Will Anderson. I believe they gave up a first-round pick in that process. The Jaguars did the same thing when it comes to getting Travis Hunter. These are the type of moves that you need to make. Like, it's not good enough to have a few good players. You need to have the elite top 5 players at a position. And, it feels like they hit on that with Will Anderson. And also, Nick Caserio is not afraid to move a lot in the NFL draft, whether it's moving up or trading down. Kind of like what we've seen from James Gladstone. They're able to maneuver around really well in the NFL draft to kind of get where they want to get. And he's also been able to build a top 5 defense for the Houston Texans. So those are a lot of upsides, but they do have a good bit of downsides. I think last year they had a disappointing year. Now, I know they won the AFC South, but I think, and there's going to be Houston Texans fans talking smack to me in my comments section, but if you have Houston Texans fans talking amongst themselves, they're all going to admit that last year was a little bit disappointing of a year for them. They weren't as dominant as they wanted to be, and while once again they were one of the final 4 teams in the AFC remaining, they are still a tier away from the top teams, right? In the top tier you have Chiefs, Ravens, Bills. They're still a step away from that, or a tier below that, and a lot of Texans fans thought they would be in that tier, and they were hoping that they would be able to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. They were not able to, so they came a step away from that. And when you also look at what they did last year, only 1 win versus a team with a winning record in the regular season, so they weren't beating actually good teams, right? I mean, they 5-6 against non-AFC South opponents. They were, I think, disappointing, and there's really 2 reasons for that. Bobby Slowick, who they did handle. Bobby Slowick is out, the former offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. But I think other than that, a big reason was the offensive line. The offensive line for the Houston Texans was not good at all. And we've seen, from Trevor Lawrence that, look, if a quarterback can't trust their offensive line, they regress. And, C.J. Stroud, instead of taking that step forward in 2024, he took actually a step back. I mean, they were still able to, win the AFC South, but like I was saying earlier, he wasn't able to enter that next tier. And you could say that C.J. Stroud might have had a better year in 2023 than he did in 2024. So a lot of Texans fans were saying, okay, this offseason will be all about prioritizing the offensive line and making sure that the offensive line is better. And when I actually look at the moves that they made, I can't definitively say that the Texans' offensive line is any better in 2025 than it was in 2024. I mean, first of all, major downgrade at left tackle. I mean, Larry Tunsil is a good left tackle, and now they have Cam Robinson starting at left tackle for them in 2025. Cam Robinson is not good anymore. He wasn't good for the Jaguars the last couple of years. He went to the Vikings and was terrible. He was one of the worst graded left tackles on PFF. He's not very good, and he's getting older. He's in his 30s now, right? So I believe he's in his 30s now. I can't say that for sure, but I believe he's in his 30s now. But he's getting older. He's always injured. He has PED issues, and he's just not very good, right? The Jaguars feel like they upgraded with the backup in Walker Little. They also signed Laken Tomlinson to be their starting left guard. He's not very good. He's just a stopgap guy until they can find a good left guard. Center Jake Andrews was just claimed off of waivers at the end of April, like after the NFL draft. So, he was a guy that wasn't really sought after by a lot of NFL teams, and they just kind of picked him up off of waivers after the Patriots cut him. A Patriots team that, by the way, has a terrible offensive line. Right guard Titus Howard, he was a right tackle last year, but he's going to move to his more natural position at right guard. Also, right tackle Blake Fisher, who was extremely inconsistent in 2024. That is their offensive line. They have no guys that you can really say, okay, this guy is a really good offensive lineman. They don't have a lot of that. So, I think right now Texans fans might be talking themselves into, okay, this offensive line should be fine. But in week 1, week 2, week 3, when CJ Stroud is once again running for his life, is once again getting hit a lot, they're going to say, why didn't we not invest more in the offensive line? So it is definitely a tricky situation for them. They drafted some guys, but I don't know. I would have expected them to do a little bit more at the offensive line, because ultimately it felt like to me there were two things holding them back: Bobby Slowick and the offensive line. And you can't just get better personnel out of nowhere. So with that said, though, all respect to the Houston Texans. They are back-to-back division champs. The AFC South will run through them. But, I don't think that the Houston Texans fans, I don't think their goal is to win the AFC South. I think their goal is to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl and to win the Super Bowl. And I don't think that they did enough this offseason to separate themselves and really put them into that tier that will be able to take down the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens or even, the Bengals if they can get things right. So, with that said, we can talk about the Jaguars. Now, the Jaguars, it's tricky. The Jaguars were awful last year, 4-13. So it's going to take rapid improvement. But I think that the Jaguars were, roster-wise, is better than what their record was last year. The Jaguars were just an organizational mess last year, a cultural mess. Trent Baalke, terrible GM. Doug Peterson looked like he was checked out. There were issues all over the place defensively. Every single player on a defense regressed, and I feel like it's because of the defensive scheme. Trevor Lawrence didn't have a great year last year, and outside of Brian Thomas Jr. and maybe like Brenton Strange, who really progressed on offensively in 2024? It was a mess, and the Jaguars' offense was stale, and now it feels like with Liam Cohen, you're going to have an offense that is much more innovative, an offense that can, do a lot of motions to kind of create separations. The Jaguars need to improve the running game, which was the bottom quarter of the NFL. Trevor Lawrence should only get better, especially when he was in and out of injury last year. The Jaguars have a wide receiver 1 going into year 2, which, by the way, Brian Thomas Jr., third most receiving yards in the NFL last year, only behind Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. The only thing I ask of Brian Thomas Jr. is to do it again, because I can't say he's a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL right now until you do it consistently. But, he is pretty good. And they got Travis Hunter on the other side of him. So, yeah, the Jaguars, right now they need to just get things right when it comes to making sure that they do the right things this offseason when it comes to putting in the right offense, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, having players buy into what Liam Cohen is selling, and just, the players, of course, getting better than what they were from last year. But, I absolutely think that the Jaguars have a chance to win the AFC South. I think that if we're in the AFC East, I don't think that there's any way the Jaguars would be better than the Bills. I don't think that the Jaguars would be better than the Ravens. I don't think the Jaguars would be better than the Chiefs. But the Jaguars are luckily in the AFC South, and I think that Houston is definitely beatable, especially with how they handled one of their weakest units in the NFL, with not really feeling like adding a bunch of upgrades. But we'll see. Hopefully the Jaguars do it. And with that said, let me know, do you guys think that the Jaguars have a shot to win the AFC South? We'd love to know. On your way out, drop a like and go Jags.